The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by Continental Energy Solutions. You can find all of our content at cesnrg.com/podcast. I'm Tim Montague, your co-host. Welcome to the Clean Power Hour. Today, space-based solar, a growing phenomenon. Plug Power is building a green hydrogen facility in New York. So excited about this. NREL's annual report on the cost of solar is out. You want to know what NREL has to say about that and much, much more. Welcome to the show, my co-host and the commercial solar guy, John Weaver.
Good morning, Timothy. Wow, it's so sunny outside. I almost thought it was afternoon because it's bright blue, but I guess we're getting massive winds. So hope you're having a nice day in Illinois today.
Beautiful sunny day. Spring is in the air. The birds are chirping. My RV solar array is collecting lots of photons. And yes, it's a beautiful day here.
We have with the wind chill, we got down into single digits this morning. So this is the we had last week, we had that fake that winter likes to put out there. They're like, oh yeah, it's going to be 40s this week. Put away those extra layers. And they're like, next week, let's drop it into the single digits. So that's where we are right now. Winter's stretching its muscles and reminding us that it's still here.
Yeah, it'll be a seesaw for a little while. It was quite cold this morning, but going to warm up into the 40s, I think, today. So I'll take it.
Yep.
Good running weather.
Best running weather, actually. I love going to run in the woods on the weekend in the 20s and 30s. The sweat balances out the cold, and it's just it's almost like you're floating through the air. Love it.
Yep. So green hydrogen, yes, we're going to talk about green hydrogen first. Plug Power is a name that I started to hear like a month ago, maybe, and now they're just in the news left and right. And you found a story about them building a facility in New York State, which is the most progressive state, as far as I'm concerned, around renewable energy. But I don't know how you see it.
It's up there with Mass, with California, New York. They're all pretty high on that list. They're all complementary to each other, learning from each other, building off each other. But state like Vermont, they already get 80% of their electricity from hydro and solar. So hey, but Vermont's tiny. So
Yep. The advantages of being small and having lots of hydro. Norway's in that camp too.
there we go.
5 million people.
So
So,
Mhm.
so Plug Power is going to make green hydrogen using fuel cells, which is their business model.
Mhm.
And what is going to happen to this green hydrogen, do you think?
Well, that's a big question. Initially it seems like hydrogen isn't worth it for vehicular fuel yet, and isn't yet worth it for heating and cooling, only for at least electricity use. It seems like right now it's only experimental based on what I've heard people say. So what I expect this product to be used for is probably for industrial purposes and manufacturing fertilizers. And by industrial purposes, maybe we'll sell it to steel companies, maybe we'll sell it to cement manufacturers. Um, it seems like the first round of hydrogen is going to be sold to industrial fertilizer, those types of people, not cars, not electricity. That's what I think.
Yeah, I would. I mean, it depends on where you are. For sure, in industrial applications, and for sure, eventually, fuel cell vehicles. It's already happening in California. It's just a matter of time. And what I don't understand is why Toyota made their fuel cell vehicle available in America before they made a pure play EV when, it's obvious that lithium ion based EVs are definitely a thing. They are saying for sure now, companies like Toyota that are going to do the pure EV thing, but they're not backing down on their fuel cells either. Um, and so, yeah, eventually transportation. As I've mentioned before, The Europeans are going hard after green hydrogen. They're going to convert natural gas infrastructure to hydrogen infrastructure, which is not a major leap of the imagination by any stretch. We could even convert oil pipelines, apparently, to hydrogen. Now, you have to upgrade the pipeline because the molecules of hydrogen are much smaller than the molecules of oil. So it wants to escape, but that's just a technical fix and it's totally doable. So maybe we shouldn't give up the ghost on pipelines from Canada. So we just want them running green hydrogen, not fossil fuels.
Yeah, hydrogen is probably going to be important. I think a lot of us are emotionally stuck on a liquid fuel, and we're still nervous about battery scaling. We're still nervous about longer term energy events. Like for instance, in the wintertime, if we have a significant slow wind event, and uh, and so it seems like hydrogen is going to be part of it. I I saw an article this week that was from Saudi Arabia, and they announced that they're moving forward on a goal of pumping hydrogen to Europe. And in that announcement, they specifically said, "We believe we're going to be able to gain access to solar electricity at the best global price available." And this was about a week ago. The best global price for electricity right now is about 1.3, 1.35 cents per kilowatt hour on a blended rate. I'm going to say that I see Saudi Arabia making a 1 cent per kilowatt hour or lesser announcement for the purpose of powering a clean hydrogen facility. And it would be really, really interesting to find out how they're going to connect it, if that's what the announcement turns out to be. And I want to see if how much money we could save and how much efficiency could be gained if we went straight from DC electricity from the solar panels right into a facility. And I don't know if that's practical because I'm not a proper electrician. However, I know that many of us have talked about pumping DC straight into buildings. And if you're building a pure hydrogen facility from the ground up and you just want pure voltage pushing up against this to break down the molecules, I'm super interested. Somebody's going to build a solar DC right into an industrial structure and feed their DC equipment with pure solar energy. And that's going to drop the price another 5-10%. And that's enough to get you from 1.3 cents. Well, not all of the way enough, but it'd get you almost to a cent per kilowatt hour. And so I'm kind of excited about what Saudi Arabia is going to say regarding their solar powering their recent hydrogen announcement. And they're expecting to say that number in the next month or so, is what the article said. So listen up. You're going to hear a record solar price number coming from Saudi Arabia. That's without a doubt. The question is, will it be under a cent? That's my projection.
Yeah, those oil producing countries would be very smart to start to get into the hydrogen game because there is a carbon bubble. There will be stranded assets. Many a fossil fuel company is going to go bye bye. And it says here though, this is interesting. The company has, this is referring to Plug Power. The company's deployed over 40,000 fuel cell systems for e-mobility, more than anyone else in the world, and has become the largest buyer of liquid hydrogen, having built and operated a hydrogen highway across North America. So it truly looks like they're also getting into the game of hydrogen fueling stations for mobile applications. So
Yeah, but I think these mobile applications might be uh lifts. I forgot what they're, little warehouse lifts, little
forklifts,
warehouse track forklifts. Geez, thank you, Timothy. All these complex words. Uh, so warehouse hydrogen fuel cells is actually a big market, and I wouldn't be surprised if 2/3, 3/4 of those 40,000 were individual units within warehouses across the United States.
yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about space-based solar because that's such a cool thing. And uh, um, CNN, of all places, broke a story on this Navy project where they've launched a satellite, which we get a view of here, that is converting solar energy to microwaves, which are then beaming down to Earth to a recipient. This device is called a PRAM, radio frequency antenna module. Sits inside a thermal vacuum chamber. Anyway, Naval Research Laboratory, cool stuff. And as we've mentioned on the show, the Chinese are going after this, just a very small scale. And so it is kind of a national security thing. I guess I'm concerned about the weaponization of these devices as well. These microwave beams could be quite powerful and be used as a weapon, probably. So maybe it's a double edge.
Everything's a double edge. Is there, I mean, we could make weapons out of everything. We're a very creative species, Timothy. Uh, give me a rock, give me a stick, give me some water, give me anything. I can make weapons out of it. This, though, I feel something similar to you because this is on a different scale. Me throwing a rock at you, yeah, I can do that from across the room. Now, global powers, will have the ability to throw a rock at anybody, everywhere, anytime, and that's something interesting.
The
And we're not.
satellite, the satellite was launched by a secret aircraft called the X-37B,
Yes.
which it looks a lot like a space shuttle. It's smaller and it's a drone. It does not have human pilots. Um, but
One
that's
thing one thing I really like about this idea is that we could use it instead of beaming electricity to Earth. We could use it to power our future space infrastructure as well. So we have this network of satellites making electricity. And instead of sending rockets and all these other hardware up there with these giant fuel tanks that have X number of years life, we put a radio receiver on them. We put a battery. We let them slowly sip electricity floating in the sky. We sort of kind of do that already by putting solar panels on these units. But now we can remove the solar panels from the small satellites, and then we can just have them have a radio frequency antenna, some kind of antenna, bringing in the juice. I really like that concept. I mean, eventually, if we put a bunch of robots in space and 3D printers, we can just have a giant system build itself up in space. I don't know. This looks like science fiction to me, and I'm totally down with watching it, putting some of my extra tax dollars in it just to see what happens. Yeah, I mean, just do it. See what happens. Come on, let's break some stuff.
yeah. No, I think we have to go there one way or another. So I'm glad somebody's doing this R&D. So you wrote a story on your blog about what does a commercial solar panel system cost? And that's a perennial question.
Yeah.
It's a moving target.
Yep.
And it's also difficult because it changes per geography. But
Yes.
the story's on screen at the commercialsolarguy.com website. Did you read this whole thing, or how much of this report did you actually read? Because it's quite lengthy, you explained to me.
Oh yeah, it's 120 pages, and I browsed every page. I've also looked at this report for 3 or 4 years now, so I'm starting to know it. We focused in this article, other than that chunk of text that you're sharing right there, which is just the broader summary that they felt important to share. And so I decided to share it too. But we focus specifically on the commercial rooftop model so we could delve into it, as those are who our customers tend to be. And so yeah, I browsed the whole document, but I really read the commercial section and covered it here. And and this is a cool report. It's a complimentary report, though. It's not an end all be all number, because this number is a perfect world installation cost. What does everything cost? Basic hardware, labor, etc. And then let's ignore any challenges. Let's pretend there's no additional land work. Let's pretend there's no additional wire runs, no additional panels, no roofing work. All the things that we have to deal with that we're worried about before we get to the site. that all that stuff is ignored here. So they're just kind of saying, in a perfect world, let's start from the bottom up. Let's pick fixed prices. Let's pretend everybody gets the same component costs and build up. And so this is a good place to start, in my opinion.
But
And
but I question the usefulness,
Mhm.
honestly. It says here $1.72 per watt DC for commercial rooftop PV. Okay. It says $1.72 watt DC for commercial ground mount PV. Well, right away, that there's a disconnect there, right? Because ground mount solar is more expensive. You have to go through much more rigorous permitting than you have to with rooftop solar, and it's more expensive. So what I okay, the technology is the same. Well, that's like a no-brainer, right? The racking, the inverters, the modules. Okay, yeah, ground mount racking is different than rooftop racking. Um, but so yeah, this frustrates me a little bit that I think there's a bit of a disconnect from the real world, and I haven't seen under the covers, and I agree it's an interesting report, and I have been watching it the last few years as well. But isn't that a problem when there's just some obvious?
well,
d-
I don't know if that's necessarily an obvious issue. I mean, the fact that permitting costs more might be balanced out by cheaper labor costs, because installation for racking on the ground mount for us is cheaper than it is for a rooftop. So I don't know, there's some dynamics, basics in the report that, it's not perfect, but I would say it's a good base. And then we build up from then with customers. And we show them a second report though that's linked in this document, and it's to tracking the Sun series from the Berkeley lab, and that lab shows real pricing, and they go the opposite direction. They actually collect installer data. And so you and I, who are people on the job, Tim, like we actually have to deal with the crap. The tracking the Sun series is the truly more applicable document for you and I, and that's a great document. This document is the base document. And what I like to say is, listen, customer, in a perfect world with no crap, this is what it might cost us. In reality, this is what we see all the installs coming at. You and I, we're going to find a number somewhere in between here. And and that's the purpose. This is an academic paper. And academic papers by default, you have to say, hey, it's not going to be perfect. They're looking for a perfect situation so that we can, build a model in our head, and then you go up from here. It's rarely going to hit this cost. And so that's why I would look at it. It's just a good base, gives you a broad education, lets you understand what might go into your project.
yeah, and it is. I mean, the overall trend curve, right, is very good. From 2000 to 2020,
Oh, yeah.
we've dropped from what, $10 a watt in
Yeah.
residential. 2, 4,
Yeah.
6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Yeah, so it's about.
I mean, I was part of the $6 to $7, $5 to $7 a watt residential world when I jumped in.
Mhm,
And by the time I got into the commercial world, it was already in the mid twos to upper twos. So that's
mhm.
about when I started doing CNI sales. So yeah,
Mhm.
these numbers look close. They're close. I just, I love the report for one specific reason. If a customer says, "Hey, what does solar cost?" I say, "Well, here's a third party government research lab. Here's a bottom up version. Here's a top down. This is what plus or minus what it costs." That's what it helps me. It has a third party who's a fair arbiter, who's not me, who's not a sales guy. It's just some academic person way far away doing spreadsheets, and that's why I like it best.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, thank you for covering it. I appreciate that. And you've done another story about the Maine solar market,
Oh,
which everybody's been hearing about.
oh,
And before we get to the story about the woes, give our
yeah.
listeners, though, John, a big picture. What is going on in Maine? Why is Maine a hot market?
Okay. Okay. So Maine recently switched governors. They went from a gentleman who was considered harshly to the right, and they went to someone who's more centrist. And this individual she's pushed solar into the forefront. And so, with about 11 months ago, when she came into office, 12 months ago now, she pushed a new law saying that 400 megawatts of community solar would be installed in Maine. And I do think that number is actually growing a tiny bit above the 400, but they're still working through this original 400 megawatt, 5 megawatt AC max per project community solar program. And 400 megs, that's solid. And it's 400 megs again, AC. So really, it's going to be like 600 megs DC size of things, 500 megs maybe. And so that is what's occurring. And from what I've read, there were maybe 2 gigawatts of projects submitted for 500 megawatts of space. So the hardworking salespeople, developers, have signed a significant volume of capacity, and that's what's happening. They held off as long as they could from doing anything in solar. They were bureaucratically hands tied, philosophically um, neutered, and now they're like, oh, now we got to join reality. And the hammer is hitting them hard.
So this is a community solar market, right?
Yes, sir.
And these projects are 5 megawatt AC, 7 megawatt DC, something like that.
Yeah, I think they start at like 250 kW up to 5 megs AC.
Yeah. I mean, the nature of the beast is if you're developing community solar, you want to go larger.
Yeah.
We see we see very few community solar projects in Illinois less than 2 megawatts AC. It's a 2 megawatt market; they go there.
Yeah.
Um, and so now the utility has sprung a surprise, and congratulations for getting back to PV Magazine. That's awesome for you to have that platform. I mean, I'm happy to see your blog too, but uh, it's both end world.
Gotta grow. Yeah. So the utility, what occurred is that the utility actually approved for interconnection with fees hundreds of projects. Some of the projects were built. The utility comes back, sends out a new letter saying, "Hey, you know that grid upgrade cost of 150,000? Yeah, it's 2 million now." It's like, what? Where did that come from? There was one person who was originally told their upgrade cost would be 150, and they got a $10 million full substation rebuild fee. They just said, "Yeah, you're going to pay for the full substation rebuilding." That's what the letter went out. Hundreds of people got these grid upgrade costs. And then it went public. Some locals reported on it, others got involved. The governor responded. And if you scroll down into that article, you're going to see a funny little paragraph where the utility says, "Oh, yeah, we did a little extra work. That 10 to 15 million bucks, yeah, 300,000." It's like, okay, so first I'm 150, now I'm 10 million, now I'm back to 300,000. And it's like, guys, what the heck is going on? The utility, and you, Tim, I mean, think about it, Tim. If you had this going on with your customers and you first told your customer, "Yeah, we're good. We're going to build this 2 megs. It's going to cost us $3 million. We got an adder of 150. The project will pencil." That's great. Now, hey, Tim, that 150, yeah, can we make it 10 million real fast? You think your customer will write that check, Tim? Just go tap on that door real fast. Appreciate that, Tim. It's like, what the heck? Um, they pushed back. The utility did one thing. First, they said, "Oh yeah, we'll switch the prices, 300 grand." So first off, they're already doubling and tripling the original interconnection numbers. And then you know what they say? They say, "Listen, we've never even done any work on solar. You've asked us to change our whole thing in 11 months. There's been no prep for this. And oh yeah, it was a mess up from a low-level manager and he didn't get a approval. So that's why all those letters went out. So it's none of our faults. It's these new hires that don't know how to do engineering and interconnection. We're going to blame them." Such crap. I mean, CMP disappointed. Um, you folks better figure it out. Otherwise, we're going to come in there and change you out of your job, because this is our public monopoly. This is our public company, and you guys don't get to be fossil utilities from the 1900s anymore, because we're not in that time. So these folks are going to have to fix it, and it sucks. These developers, they're getting whooped. This is going to slow down their projects. This is going to affect investment. This is going to affect the state economy in Maine. They're going to get through it. It's going to take them a year or two, but they need to work on that, because that's you can't do that to a business owner who's put down money, or a developer who's spent millions of bucks. You don't get to change the contract. That's illegal, and we'll see how that comes out. I, I feel for those people. I mean, you got millions of dollars sitting in the field and you can't even plug it in, and that's just that would make me cry.
Well, these shenanigans go on in many places, John.
Yeah,
And I think it my take on it is that utilities are used to being monopolies, even if they are regulated monopolies. It can lead to a very insular environment where they are not responsive, quote unquote, to consumers or the marketplace because they don't have to be. Now, when the grid goes down like it did in Texas, they are held accountable to some extent, and we have only begun to see the fallout there with commissioners resigning and so forth. Um, but at the end of the day, this is just really bad for Maine. It's really bad for the solar industry. It causes developers headaches and delays, which turns into money out the door. It's costly, and so I'm sorry to hear this, and I feel for those developers who are working in Maine. Although eventually they'll figure it out, and obviously some projects are already getting built. So, because some of them had already built their project before the interconnection fee changed, which I don't see how that works, right? It's like that's nonsense. But
I mean, that's the roughest piece. It's you've already spent the million. You've already got your investors to approve it. It takes a long time to move through a project to get an investment company to say, okay, here's 2 million bucks, build it. And you've got these contracts signed. These developers, they're going to look bad in the face of their investors. Now, hopefully, the reporting on this event will help, that these investors can defend themselves. But it's going to be challenging to work through. It'll take a couple of years, and it will work because investors are aggressive and they'll keep pushing. And us developers, we're kind of used to this crap. So it's just, like you said, Tim, I'm sure you guys see it as well. I mean, you guys are in tough markets too. And so, it's a fight. It's a fight.
yep, it can be a fight. Um, I don't know if there's a simple resolution to it, but well, let's talk about BIPV, building integrated photovoltaics. You found some cool photos on Twitter, and as usual, from Europe, from the Netherlands,
Yeah.
um, where they're cladding buildings in solar panels and solar glass. I'm gonna show the tweet about the technology as well. But
Yeah.
have you ever seen a building in the U.S. that's clad in solar array?
I haven't yet.
Yeah.
I haven't. Yeah. There's one in Philly that some dude did that was really weird. There's another one up in Toronto I saw in the news. I haven't seen too much though. It's just getting happening. I love this BIPV stuff. It just looks so neat. They have different rules in Europe about how roofing materials work, and where I know of a BIPV company that's working on it in the US, and they haven't yet turned into a proper BIPV approval, but they're working through it. They're trying to become it. And so it's
Yeah.
yeah, these neat products. I love these products. I can't wait to see them expand.
The energy wall, I call this a roof tile. And so similar concept to the Tesla solar roof. Um,
Ah, look at
and
that. Beautiful.
that even looks like a glass tile to me. But
Yeah.
um, these solar roof tiles are actually not new, right? They've various roofing manufacturers have gotten in and out of the roof tile industry, and it looks like maybe we've reached a tipping point, though. Honestly, John, that you're seeing whole developments now with these solar roof tiles in some of the early adopting places like Northern Europe. So thank you for
Mhm.
Harold Van de Ven.
Vandevan name. Yeah, I met with I can't remember who the manufacturer is, but they had the Atlas roof tile, and they were a proper roofing company. So I'm at a solar conference, and I asked him, I said, so how's business? And this was like, a year and a half ago when we still interacted with other human beings at conferences. Um, but he said Elon Musk and Tesla's announcement have put our business through the roof. He said everybody wants a solar tile. Now they know it's possible and they're calling us. And even though we don't have Tesla's product isn't available to normies and people just want it now. And apparently they're the Tesla announcement has done a significant job at helping this industry start to pop a little more. So I think you might be right. The Musk effect, the Elon Musk marketing effect might have created that tipping point, just like he did with getting batteries cheaper. He got batteries cheaper, and now he's pushing this solar roof thing. That's not trivial. That's pretty cool. He's breaking new industries. I hope he holds on to it and makes some good money from it.
Yeah, I think building integrated solar has a great future, and it's just a question of when is it really going to take off. Speaking of things that
Totally.
we don't know when they're going to take off, the Pennsylvania market is one of those things.
Ah,
Uh, and you've written a story about it. Uh,
yeah.
I, I want Pennsylvania to become a real solar market. My brother lives in Pennsylvania. I have some good friends there. It's an amazing state. It's a big state with lots of real estate, obviously, and mountainous. So that could be a challenge. But what is going on in PA?
Well, technically nothing. They've had two community solar laws sitting on the books for about a year and a half, 2 years, and they haven't moved forward. And you can see it referenced there, HB 531 and SB 705. And so the state really they have limited solar laws. They have a REC, a renewable energy certificate, that was recently upped in value by saying you can only get RECs for solar within the state of PA. It has to be generated and sold within the state. Prior, you could bring RECs from anywhere around the country and sell them there for a quarter of a cent, half a cent, a tenth of a cent, whatever it was. Um, and that was a weird rule. You could build solar in Texas and Oregon and Wyoming and then get a tenth of a penny from PA somehow. So they
You're
changed
talking
that.
about
So now,
the Pennsylvania market for Rex.
so you used to be able to build a solar project anywhere in the U.S. and then you could file in the state of Pennsylvania, and they would pay you renewable energy certificates that were worth nothing, trivial amounts, but something, at scale, an extra 10,000 a year. And so what this occurred is that every state that didn't have any solar incentives, the developers would just register their projects in Pennsylvania, and they would flood the market and the RECs went to garbage. Recently, they changed the REC rule and they said the only people that are allowed to get PA renewable energy certificates is solar built in PA and sold in PA. And so that helped, but it only helps big solar. It only helps bigger than 20 megs who can compete against the wholesale gas prices. And so otherwise, the market's kind of dead. This article looked at a bunch of research that, first off, there's like 2 gigs of solar projects in the queues across Pennsylvania, greater than a meg. They're on the PJM software tool, so you can see everything that's being built in the state. And these 1 to 2 gigs of projects in this article, a researcher goes through and says, hey, if it turns, this is the money we can see coming from this. We're going to make 5 million bucks a year in land lease payments. We're going to have $183 million in labor benefits. We're going to have 50 to 60 million in broader benefits. That's for the first gig. If we go to like 10 gigs, suddenly we're talking more than $1 billion in land lease payments over the course of 25, 30 years going to farmers. And so the discussion is, how does PA move forward? They got a lot of fracking. They still have coal. I mean, they're still literally mining coal in PA. Are these folks ready to take on a new energy resource within their state? And they're super close. All the big solar developers are there. We, commercial solar guy, we have a landman. He works in PA. He works in New York. we got about 20 projects that we're working in PA, and we're hoping to turn them into a portfolio and get more. We want to do about 100 megs of development in PA for in 6.5 megawatt chunks. And then, of course, we're looking for big land too, because we're going to have hopefully a real special announcement from Commercial Solar Guy in the next couple of weeks about a partner who's going to work with us and help us develop 20 meg and larger projects, because that's their specialty. And we get inbound calls for these big land leads. So we want to figure out how to use them. And that's going to happen in New York and PA as well. And so we're hoping to be part of it. But they still got to change the laws. They still got to make it a thing, because right now it's not a thing. Right now it's a potential thing. It's a thing developers are spending money on, and they're hiring and they're pushing. My landman, he owns a couple pieces of land. He gets a phone call a week. They're like, "Hey, you're next to a substation. Hey, you got 20 acres. Want to build 7 megs?" And we're like, "Yeah, tell us about your bid." We've already signed the project up and we're moving forward it with ourselves. But when the developers call in to the landman, he's just collecting knowledge from him, and we're learning. $1,000 an acre, $1,200 an acre. That's kind of the starting price, and 25-year contract pending the legislation that comes through. And so that's what we're hoping to see pop there. The politics have to turn, though. The state is still it's a little bit to the right, a little bit red. So solar is still a little touchy feely, and with our past election, there's still a lot of hurt feelings. So we'll see how things evolve. But the market's close, but it's not there. It's not a real market yet. It's close, inches away, Timothy.
Well, and even after it becomes a market, it can be a boom and a bust, like we have in Illinois, right? As you mentioned in Maine, uh, there's oversubscription to these community solar opportunities, and so that's kind of what I'm wondering is who's going to figure out a smooth ride. Um, the boom and the bust is very challenging, but
But this is the nature of us being at the cutting edge, Tim. I mean, when you're at the cutting edge, people initially just don't seem to get it right initially. They just they aim for it. But then we developers who are just super aggressives and watching. I mean, I hear people tell me, it's like, "John, I don't know how to be a developer. You guys have emotional fortitude to go up and down and this way and that way. And you talk to 50 people and only one of them like you." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's development." And it's,
yeah.
Tim, so it's guys like you who are taking punches and used to this, and we force that. We make that happen. So it's always going to be a little bit of a boom and bust, I suspect, and we just got to deal. Ugh.
Yeah. So our last story, I think, will be the story about Exelon. We've
Yeah.
talked a lot about utilities on the show, and here in Illinois, we have a major utility called Exelon that runs a fleet of nuclear power plants, a fleet of coal and gas facilities, and they also own, for example, an investor-owned utility called Commonwealth Edison, which is the utility for all of northern Illinois. It's in PJM, and then they also own supply companies like Constellation Energy, which operates all over the eastern half of the United States. We are a deregulated state, so we have 70 plus energy suppliers. So if you're a Commonwealth Edison customer, you can also buy the supply of the energy from many different vendors, including Constellation. So even though Exelon technically is not in the supply business, they're in the supply business. But anyway, there was a scandal. Um, it still has not been really, I don't think, clarified what what transpired, but we have, we've talked about legislation being stalled. We have legislation here in Illinois to expand our RPS, to expand renewable energy credits so that there can be a second tranche of community solar and rooftop solar for residential, commercial, industrial customers. Exelon is now breaking up into two companies, according to the story by Green Tech Media. And I don't know exactly how this is in the industry's favor or not down the line, but basically their generating companies, the nuclear fleet and the coal and gas fleet is going to be one company, and then everything else is going to be another company. So that other company will own the ComEds of the world and the constellations of the world. Um, so, I mean, I don't know if you have a takeaway from this story, John. My takeaway is that there is increased scrutiny of these megalithic companies that are very influential in politics, in the economy, and um, maybe this is a harbinger of much more change to come. I don't know. I certainly would welcome change. So, but yeah, I'd say
Well,
it's noteworthy because Exelon is such a big utility.
I mean, for how long ago was it that Exelon got in trouble for bribery in Illinois?
Oh, 3 months ago.
I thought you were going to say like years, Tim. I didn't know it was months. Jeez. And, it's funny. Exelon is also in Ohio, which just had its own massive bribery scandal, which is really ongoing. And they felt it important to say, hey, we're not part of that. We're not a bad company. Our bribery is only in this state. We would never bribe people in that state. So there's that. I just want to taint this conversation first with the fact that Exelon is a partial criminal enterprise. I mean, they're breaking laws and they're still dealing with it. So my gut says there are two things going on here. One, Exelon knows that their continual attempts to keep their ROI, their IRR up, is going to get more pressure as we see them getting in trouble for more bribery. So this is probably a response to them breaking the law. Um, and separately, they're failing with nuclear. They're saying that they're going to drop 4 gigs of nuclear in Illinois this year, dude. 4 gigs. That would offset 100% of the solar electricity we're installing across the whole of the United States this year. It's just like, hey, that 25 gigawatts of solar at 20% capacity factor, which are so beautiful,
Yeah.
let's just trash it. And, and it's not getting trashed. I'm saying it wrong, but that's what it's
Well,
like. The amount of electricity from those 4 gigs is everything that you and I are going to install this year, man. And they're failing at that. And I think they're trying to figure out a way to they separate these things. They're going to get hammered with the politics because they keep breaking laws, and they're going to have to do something. I mean, they're going to be begging for money for these nuclear plants, and unfortunately, I support it. And it's like we need a carbon tax or something on the gas and the coal in the Midwest and PJM, and these nuclear plants need to stay on. And this company is just trying to figure out a way to manipulate the system a little more. This isn't good for the consumers. That's not the way these people work. This is good for their stock margins, and we're going to take a little bit of a shaft here, but hopefully we can deal with it. I don't know. I'm not smart enough and deep enough at this level to really give you hard ideas about how this stuff will fall out, but I don't trust any utilities, especially ones that are dealing with bribery law breaking right now as we're talking. There's lawyers talking about them and their law breaking, and that's what we got to deal with these people. It's just their nature.
yeah, I mean, they have a real hammer to hold over Illinois because 70% of our power grid comes from the nuclear fleet here. And these plants are non-economical, so they need to be propped up. The Future Energy Jobs Act of 2016 gave the nuclear industry $200 million a year, which is what the renewables industry's got. That was for Clinton and Quad Cities. Now there's two other facilities that are on the chopping block here, Dresden and one other, Byron and Dresden, which Exelon is threatening to close. And trust me, they are seeking handouts to keep those plants open. And I don't know what is best in terms of decarbonizing the Illinois economy. Of course, nuclear is low carbon energy. The the question for me is, have we figured out how to safely store the waste from those facilities, which is totally non-trivial and has been a bit of a shell game. And we really do not have a national strategy, John, for dealing with our nuclear waste. We've just been shoving it under the carpet. A lot of it is stored on site in pools of water like swimming pools. And if you flew an airplane into the swimming pool and the pool drains, guess what? You have a nuclear fire on your hands, and that is contaminating a very large area. So it is a higher risk than most people are even vaguely aware of. And it's a problem that we need to solve. I'm open to next gen nuclear, which is safer and more modular. They call it small modular reactors, on the order of 2 megawatt plants instead of thousand or multiple thousands of megawatt plants, right? But all right, man. Well, thanks for another great clean power hour. Commercial solar guy, how can our listeners reach you?
First off, Tim, really? That was an hour? How the heck did we do that? We just went through an hour? Tim, we got to talk about boring stuff from now on, okay? Because this, I want to keep talking with you about stuff, and we're already done. You're kicking me off the show. Jeez, now I got to go back to work. Anyway, uh, commercialsolarguy.com. That's where I'm at. I'm also on Twitter every single day, way too much goofing off. So if you look up Solar and Mass, Commercial Solar Guy, you'll find lots of good news on Twitter. That's where I like to hang out. LinkedIn, cool, but just type in Commercial Solar Guy into Google, and you will find us all over. And there goes a picture of my big goofy smile on the front of my website. So let us know. We're growing. We build in the Northeast. We develop, consult nationwide. And got a good team.
Excellent. Well, you can find me, Tim Montague, at cesnrg.com/podcast, where all of our content lives. We're bringing you 2 solar podcasts a week, plus 1 clean power hour with myself and John Weaver. And I look forward to having more of you subscribe to our channel. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and please tell us what you want to hear more about. John and I are operating otherwise in our little vacuum heads, and while it's very good stuff, it could be better if you gave us your suggestions, so please do that. Hey, John, I want to thank you for joining me again and look forward to next week. Have a great day.